You said that the antithetical history would be, well, the black people owned the land. And so that's
blacks
like
are
all
generally
black people are the
homogenous.
same people.
Yeah.
And they had a concept of ownership, and ownership applied despite the fact that these were widely dispersed nomadic tribesmen. Ownership applied to all the land, like over what district? I mean, that's something that's sort of ambivalent. You said when the scouts went north, they found huge tracts of land that were unoccupied. I mean, even in European, say British, English, British common law now, if you leave a tract of land uninhabited, if there's a tract of land that's uninhabited and someone comes along and improves it and builds a domicile, at some point they obtain rights over it. Because there's a deep principle that if you're not using the land, it doesn't belong to you.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Certainly not intrinsically, and even under a contract, like, because you can end up with, and squatters' rights can obviously be taken too far, but we should note that there is a principle that if you're not using it, you don't own it. Right.
It's the Dutch legal principle of res nullius is a piece of land or property that doesn't belong to anyone because there's no one there.
Right.
And so that's something so a res nullius is something that you can occupy. But that's not the narrative. That's not the mainstream narrative. I think there are very few historians who actually push this mainstream narrative. I think most historians who are worth their salt know that the history of land ownership in South Africa is much more complex.
Well, then that begs a question. And now let's turn from the historical to the more political, and then we'll start talking about the current day in South Africa, because I think we laid the groundwork quite nicely. So the typical observer of South Africa pretty much buys the land was inhabited by the black people, and then the white people came and stole it. They buy that narrative.
Yep.
Right. So given the complexities of the situation and the fact that, as you just pointed out, most historians worth their salt tell a story that's somewhat approximately akin to the story you just described, why is it that isn't the story that's widespread in the West as such? Why do you think that is?
That is a very good question, and I think it deserves a long answer, and I might not have the full answer.
Yeah, well, fair enough.
Because I think it ties in with a lot of the problems that the West has in terms of this deep-rooted sense of guilt that Westerners have about their own history, about their own past. And this oikophobic, I think that's Roger Scruton's term, of sort of hating your own and having a deep sense of remorse for your own history and feeling sorry for that. I think it's rooted in that. It's this down with us mentality that we are the bad guys and we need to feel sorry for
Do you see any of that in South Africa among the Bantu?
No.
Like literally none? Is there any streams of black thought, let's say in South Africa, where there's guilt being manifested for what happened to the Bushmen?
To be honest, I haven't seen that. What I can say is Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, who was a very well-known Zulu politician, anti-apartheid activist, he once apologized to the Afrikaner people for the massacre of Piet Retief that I mentioned earlier.
Okay, so that's one example of remorse for expansionist overreach, let's say.
Yes, that's
right.
the
Because I'm curious about why this would be particularly a European malaise.